Good afternoon, anti-novelist, Lilligans, curious onlookers, and friends. Welcome back to this episode of Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order. So if you've been following along, you know that we've been talking about short forms of fiction. Well, I am deep into writing that chapter of the book, and I wanted to share something with you because this has been really fun to write about, and I like giving you examples from the real world of what this process looks like. So I'm going to put away the cards that we have been working on as we chew our way through various forms of short fiction, and I'm going to take you over to the tracker for the book that I'm writing for you. So today you will see I am currently sitting at 29,000 words. Woo, I feel like I should throw confetti. But I want to take you over here to chapter 14. Chapter 14 is the chapter on conflict narrative. This is a particular kind of Western conflict-driven story that often revolves around some kind of inciting incident, some kind of key event, okay? So in order to demonstrate that for you in the book, I have a 68-point conflict matrix. This has 68 different kinds of conflict that you can use to build out a conflict-driven narrative if that's the kind of story that you're writing. So what does that look like? How does that work? Well, let's key into a particular example. If you go down here to this line, you will see a break-in is one of the options. Now, this conflict matrix is actually from the novel that I'm working on that I have set aside during its developmental edit temporarily so that I can get Zettelkasten for Fiction written for you. But my novel is still chugging along quietly in the background. So this graph shows various conflicts, crisis, activities that happen throughout the course of my novel. So if you look at the break-in, you see in Act 1, my main character has a break-in. So what does that look like? In terms of building out your Zettelkasten, let's talk about that for a second. This card is 1150/14.101. So this is where it lives because this is part of a chapter of my book. For your purposes, however, when I have you do this exercise over in the book, I'm going to have you label it according to your own Zettelkasten numbering system. So don't necessarily use my number as I'm discussing it today. This will be in the book. The important part of this exercise is the title of this card, Become an Experience Collector. What does that mean? That means I want you to start looking around your life. Look at your experiences, look at the things that fascinate you, look at the things that are huge turnoffs or that you can't stand or things that annoy you. I want you to start dialing in on those emotions and those things around your own life that could become fodder for your story. Let me show you what I mean. On my Become an Experience Collector sample card, I've written the break-in. Now, I have actually experienced a home break-in. It was god-awful. I don't recommend it. Absolutely did not enjoy it. Luckily, I wasn't there. I came home to discover it. So that's the first thing on my card, discovery and shock. When I opened the door and saw the place in disarray, it was quite shocking. The first thing is I experienced a very slow realization because I had to make sense of my racing thoughts of why things were thrown around the way that they were. And slowly I realized, holy crap, our apartment had been broken into. So this begs the question, what tiny details would be noticed in that situation? Would you notice the things strewn about? Would you immediately think, holy crap, is my cat okay? Yes, mine was, thank goodness. Would you take charge of the situation or would you shrink away? The reason you're asking yourself these key questions about your experience of this event is because these are going to become touch points that allow you to recall this should you need to write this scene for your story. I've made a note that there is debris and it's a wrecked place. Immediately you're asking yourself, holy crap, what's missing? What's wrong? I made a note of a broken window and it was raining in. Those are all key details that you can cue into as you start writing this kind of scene. Whether you're working on a piece of short fiction, as we've been talking about, those microfiction, those nanofiction pieces, or if you're contributing a scene to a larger novel project. Now, using these details as our point of departure, I am going to click over to the novel that I am working on, and I'm just going to read you a couple of paragraphs that grew out of this kind of exercise. So, my main character has just come back to find her apartment broken into. Chapter 42, The Break-In. A light breeze blew the white living room sheers over shattered glass. The broken window shards sparkled across the carpet as lightning flashed and rain began to blow across the windowsill. Papers skittered and shuffled in the gusts of wind. Every drawer of the hutch and the desk had been pulled from its housing and tossed into a heap of broken and splintered wood against the far wall. The contents of the desk were strewn across the desktop and onto the floor. The rooms that Tara had called home for the last 2 decades were unrecognizable in the debris. Anything movable had been rifled through and discarded, which left only the farm table and the hutch still standing. Tara pushed the front door open and pulled her key from the lock. She would later say a locked door did fat little good when the living room window sat square over the first floor awning. Someone had simply climbed up to the picture window, slid it open, smashed in, and stepped in from the ledge. Not stealthy. Flipping the switch just inside the door, the lamplight clicked on to dispel the darkness. Tara was comforted by the warm glow. Then the full shock of the scene washed over her. At first glance, it wasn't clear what the hell had happened. Realization was slow. A break-in. First thought, what had been taken? Tara stood frozen in the doorway. Next thought, were they still here? Her logical mind told her not to go in. She waited and listened. Only the wet patter of rain. Frozen in the doorway, she remembered a story her Grandma Helen had often told about the in-betweens and how she believed that doorways were portals of passage within and through worlds. One never knew what was behind the door, if only one knew how to open them. Tara remembered standing in her bedroom doorway as a small child and waiting to be transported to, or at least to be shown, another world. It never happened, and she eventually filed the memory away with Grandma's other stories. A sharp crack of thunder and the smell of rain rushing in through the window broke her rumination. She willed her feet to move, but they would not. This in-between offered only fear and pain on the other side. She didn't want to know all that was broken or missing. The bits of her life strewn across the room could be ignored if she closed her eyes and didn't leave the safety of the in-between. As the first tear slipped down her cheek, she dropped her bag on the floor. Her knees buckled and she slid down the door frame to sit. She wrapped her arms around her legs and rested her head on her knees. Her first sob broke free as the thunder rolled outside, followed by a jagged burst of lightning. Okay, so see how that translated? I took my experiences as I had collected them. I drafted them out on my card, kind of gathered my thoughts in terms of what I thought I might want to include and what I could recall from that memory. And then I went in and I drafted my scene so that I put that main character and the reader, thereby, right into that scene so that they could experience what it looked like, what she felt, what it smelled like, what was happening in the environment, all of those details packed into that scene. So, that concludes today's little episode of short fiction story time. This could go anywhere. This could be a scene in a novel like it is in mine. This could be the opening that was only 420 words. This could be the opening to maybe a microfiction 1,000-word story. You can go anywhere with these kinds of details, but the most important part is you've got to become an experience collector. Begin marking down those little bits of experience and observations, save them on your cards, make sure that you assign them a number and that they get installed in your index. So if I go to B and I look up the word break-in under B, it's going to take me to this card and I can pull those details out of my note box and immediately get myself to writing. So that concludes today's up-close and personal look at how you harness gathering your experiences, storing them in your Zettelkasten, and then recalling those things so that when you're ready to sit down and write, bingo, you pack them into that powerhouse scene that pulls your readers into your story. As always, thank you so much for your attention and your time. I appreciate each and every one of my subscribers. I am so grateful to have all of you with me on this journey. I'm working fast and furious to get this book written so that I can get it into your hands. I'm still on track to have it finished by the first of the year, so that is terrific news. I'm so excited. And I will keep plugging away. It is about 4 p.m. here in the Midwest on the cattle ranch. I've got about 2 sprints left in me, so I'm going to hunker back down, dive back into my conflict matrix, and start drafting out a way for you to start capturing all of these scenarios, these little bits of conflict, so that you can start building out your own cards and start writing your story. So I will see you next time. As always, thank you so much.